Hi, health coaches. This week we've got another health coaching Q&A episode for you. We're taking listener questions and riffing on them so you can learn and we can grow. Got a question? Submit it at hello@primalhealthcoach.com. Let's jump in. Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Erin Power here. I've got some great questions submitted by you. Now, who are you? Who are you? Well, you might be a Health Coach Radio listener. And if you're listening to Health Coach Radio, then you can submit your questions about anything relating to health coaching, the actual art and science of coaching itself, how to coach, kind of client-related questions you might have as you work through your client relationships. Maybe you have business questions, anything at all. You can submit those to hello@primalhealthcoach.com. If you are a Primal Health Coach student or graduate already, hello, you have access to a special question submission form that's inside your course curriculum. You can submit questions any old time you want. I run through the questions every week to see if there's maybe a common thread that I can pull here to create a compelling session, a learning session, a talking session. And today there were some interesting questions submitted. So I'm going to try to pull together two seemingly diverse topics into one episode. And I want to preface this by teasing what these two topics are so that you'll keep listening. And then I'll dive into them individually. Does that sound good? So the two topics I'm going to be covering today are how the semaglutide class of drugs has impacted my business and maybe your business as a health coach who focuses on weight loss or any metabolic stuff. Okay. So anybody who's in the weight loss space, the metabolism space, maybe you're a keto coach or maybe you're into metabolic flexibility, or maybe you help people who are insulin resistant. That's who I work with, right? How have these drugs impacted my practice with my clients? And I do have some exposure to these drugs in my client practice. This year, first time, right? 2023, hello, here they are. They're coming in hot, right? So but that's probably only going to grow. So this is a really important conversation for us to have, I think. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then as an adjunct to that, I had somebody submit a question wondering just generally how my health coaching practice changed or grew or evolved over this last year. So I think those two topics kind of work together. We have an opportunity to learn about this class of medications, which is great. That's always good to do. And I think there's something really interesting in terms of walking through how a practicing health coach is seeing these come up in their practice and how my practice has had to change and shift over the years. So we'll go through those two bigger topics today. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you again for joining. Let's dive in. So as teased, I got this question from two question submitters. Tamara, who asked, with the downturn in economy and the medical assisted weight loss shots, have you noticed a decrease in the number of people who are reaching out and signing up for health coaching services? Great question. And Elena asked, I'd love a general review of the weight loss medications in the news lately, such as Ozempic. I'd like to have at least a basic working knowledge of the mechanisms they work on within the body and how they might come up as a topic within the coaching relationship. So super good questions. One thing I just want to sort of preface this whole conversation with is that typically when I come onto these Q&A webinars and podcast episodes, I have taken some time to really pull my thoughts together, but today I didn't. So today we are going unscripted. We're going off book, unscripted riff, okay, on this stuff. So kind of hang with me as I go back and forth between Tamara's question and Elena's question, because they're kind of similar but different, right? And I do want to start with a bit of like, I guess, a disclaimer, a couple of them. So first of all, I do not think health coaches need to have a deep understanding of these drugs. Elena was specifically asking for a basic understanding of the mechanism. of action, which I think is probably useful. But I'm not going to take you deeply into the mechanisms of the drugs. I'm just going to pull from what I know, what I was able to pull off the internet, quite frankly, what I've heard and learned about these drugs, how they work in the body at a high level. Okay. Just so that you know, these drugs work on many different mechanisms inside the body, but I'm going to pull out about the three big ones, what I consider the three big ones that maybe as health coaches we should know about. Okay. If you have a personal, deeper curiosity about these drugs and you want to go way, way, way deeper into the mechanism of action as a personal interest, please go ahead. That's always within your purview as basically a health curious person. Health coaches are very health curious. We devour media. We want to learn about this stuff for our own knowledge, but I don't believe at all that we need to bring that deep knowledge into the coaching relationship. So if you have a deeper curiosity than what I'm going to go into today, because I'm coming at this from the perspective of a health coach, y'all, please seek out the deeper conversations from doctors, researchers, people who have done the deep dives on these mechanisms, and just feel free to immerse yourself in that learning. And then also, importantly, understand that as a health coach working with clients, you will not ever need to access that level of information. It's for your information only. And having a very high level understanding of how the meds work is plenty to bring into your health coaching relationships. Okay. Because from there, your job is to work with the human, the person on the drug or considering the drug, working with that person in their day-to-day lives as they navigate food, eating, sleeping, moving, etc., in the context of having been prescribed these drugs. Okay. The prescriptions themselves are not ever in your domain. That's the client's choice. They made that decision with their doctor. That's a conversation that the client and the doctor will have. That's not your domain. I have another personal disclaimer to add. I am not the kind of person, I'm not the kind of health professional who comes down on big pharma. You're not going to hear me pounding my fist against big pharma in this episode or ever, because I work with people. I work with people who are bewildered and confused and want help. They want help, and they wanted help from the doctor. They wanted help from the pharmacy. They were reaching for help wherever they could find it. They reached out to me. I'm going to help them. I'm not going to help them by belittling and bemoaning the other parts of the healthcare industry or the sick care system, as some people call it. You'll never hear me call it that. I'm not going to go there. I'm here for the people. I try really hard not to invest too much of my mind share in stressing about the bigger systemic problems with the healthcare and pharmacological, systems, because they're not in my lane. And my clients don't need my help with that. My lane is busy enough as it is. I have enough to do with clients. I help my clients understand and execute healthy behavior change in their lives. I'm asking Sally if she managed to get to the grocery store yet. And does she know how to cook those lamb chops she got on special? Let's look up some recipes together. Do you have an Instant Pot? No, let's try a slow cooker. What time are you planning on going to bed tonight, Sally? Like, this is what I'm working on with my clients. Whether Sally is or isn't on these drugs or any other drugs, whether Sally has a diagnosed disease state that she's managing with her doctor, that doesn't change how I work with her. This is our lane as health coaches. Those are my disclaimers. Okay. So please understand that when I riff on this in an unscripted fashion, that's the origin from which I'm approaching it. There are no shortage of resources for you if you want to, wave your anti-sick care system flag. And I might be there with you on some of those rallies, but not when I'm talking to health coaches about health coaching. We are here for people. We are here for the humans in our care. So we need to have a very human approach to this. Okay. So to Elena's question first, which was, I'd love a general review of the weight loss medications. I'd like to have at least a basic working knowledge of the mechanisms they work on within the body, and also how they might come up as a topic within the coaching relationship. So I'm going to talk about, how this comes up in the coaching relationship. That's going to be part 2 of this. Part 1, let's talk mechanism of action. And I'm going to talk about this from my perspective as a health coach who works with mild to moderately insulin resistant middle-aged women. Okay. That's important to know, because guess who the target audience is for these drugs? Kind of midlife women, right? we turned 40 and now we've got this little belly or whatever it is, meno belly, I've seen it called. It's just insane. The marketing to women of a certain age that it's all downhill from here. And now you have to lean on these kind of kooky methods to, try to fight back against menopause. And I just don't buy it. I'm very loud about that. It's like, you know what? We can support your metabolism through any stage of life. Don't throw in the towel. I got you. I'm your health coach. I can help you with this because I understand the mechanism in the body of mild to moderate insulin resistance because I myself was moderately insulin resistant, right? Now, I don't go to market as I'm the health coach for mild to moderately insulin resistant midlife women because they don't know they're insulin resistant. They know that they're putting on weight quickly. It's around the abdomen. They can't get rid of it. They're hungry. They've got these crazy cravings. They're fatigued. They're unmotivated. All these symptoms of insulin resistance. That's what they come to me feeling. And in my head, I think, okay, yeah, you're metabolically a little stuck right now. Insulin's not playing nice with your cells because those little insulin receptors are a little, they're a little slow or stuck or whatever the case is. But I don't work with them to cure insulin resistance. I work with them to get this whole metabolic mechanism kind of just generally flowing a bit better. Okay. So maybe you work in that same space. Maybe you work in the weight loss space. Maybe you don't approach it from the insulin resistance perspective. Maybe you approach it from more like, I'm a keto coach. I'm a macro coach. I'm a calorie coach. I do meal plans. Whatever approach you take, we're all kind of doing the same thing. We're trying to improve, make changes to metabolic pathways so that the human can lose weight ultimately. So for any coach who plays in the weight loss space in any way, these drugs become something that you should just be really aware of. Okay. And I want you to be aware of them in an open-minded way. That would be my plea to you. Let's be open-minded about the drugs. They're there. They are here to stay. They're not going anywhere, not for a while. Your clients are wise to them. They're considering them, quite frankly. They're weighing the pros and cons. They're doing the decisional balance, shall we say. So we have to just be a supportive, soft place to land for people who are trying to make these big decisions about their health. Okay. I think I'm done with disclaimers. That was a lot, but let's get into the mechanism of these drugs. Semaglutide drugs. We've got what? We've got Ozempic. We've got Wegovy. We've got Mounjaro. There's a new one called Zepbound. They have kooky names, and some of them are prescribed for type 2 diabetes. And some of them are prescribed for weight loss, but they're the same. They're basically the same. Let's keep it simple. So there are 3 mechanisms that these drugs work on. There's a million. There's actually dozens of mechanisms, but the 3 that I think are important for us to really just basically high level know are as follows. So the drugs mimic the GLP-1 hormone, which is released in the gastrointestinal tract in response to eating. One role of GLP-1 is to prompt the body to produce more insulin. The hormone insulin, which is a hormone that, in a manner of speaking, picks the fuel up out of the blood and goes and takes it into the cells so the cells can put it to work. Another role of GLP-1 is it influences satiety signaling in the brain. So the feeling of fullness in the brain is influenced by the presence of GLP-1, this hormone. And GLP-1 also acts on the GI tract, sort of reducing the peristalsis action. So delaying gastric emptying. I'm sure you've heard that in your travels. Delayed gastric emptying. Doesn't sound pleasant. So for all of those 3 mechanisms, people feel less hungry, or they have just much less interest in eating. With increased insulin present in the blood, like I said, fuel can be better taken up from the blood and deposited into the cells. And in this way, you're kind of goosing insulin resistance a little bit. So as we know, and as explained, insulin resistant cells do not really want to accept insulin. The doors are kind of closed on insulin. So when we're insulin resistant, we get the feeling of being just kind of chronically undernourished. It's a really hard feeling to live with. It's very hard. I have a lot of empathy for that matter, for folks who have been battling their own hunger cues because they're mild to moderately insulin resistant, or they've been just in deprivation mode or whatever the case may be. But when you're battling an incredible hunger, it's really hard to eat less and move more, which is the very, very conventional wisdom on weight loss. It just isn't working for people, certainly not for my clients. It's the appetite signaling that you have from kind of undernourished cells because insulin hasn't been able to bring the fuel into the cells. It's tremendous. You cannot white knuckle it through that feat of willpower. It's virtually impossible. GLP-1, these GLP-1 mimicking hormones, encourage more production of insulin from the pancreas. Now there's more insulin in the blood. So theoretically, maybe we can squeeze some insulin into the cells. That's kind of the approach there. I don't love this. This is not my favorite of the mechanisms. I just think because I'm approaching this from a person who's already insulin resistant and the relationship between the cells and insulin is already pretty dodgy. Putting more insulin around the cells in the blood is just, I just don't, it's not solving that problem. It's goosing it, right? It's just sort of finding sort of a back way to solve for the problem of insulin resistance, which is that insulin can't get into the cells. We're just squeezing more insulin in. And I don't think that's a great approach, but that's one of the ways this drug works. The second way, as I mentioned earlier, is it acts on satiety signaling at the brain, which just makes you feel less hungry, or you have less of an urge to go and get food, find food. So I just want to, I know that sounds like two ways of saying the same thing, but when I work with clients a lot on their hunger signaling, and hunger is kind of this like physiological signal in and around the stomach, which is like the grumbling, the gurgling, you should go eat something. But the interest in food, the thinking about food, the noise around food at the brain is actually a kind of a different thing. And the satiety signal in the brain is what is impacted or acted upon by these drugs. And I do love this. I do like this because people really struggle with their mental cravings for food. That sort of get call for food. The noise around food is so loud. If it can quieten down, people can just make different food choices. If you weren't, crazed with hunger, you could maybe make a better choice, right? It's when we're feeling kind of overwhelmed by our own hunger signals that we're reaching for the convenience options or hitting the drive-through or whatever. We're making just an unsupportive food choice because the hunger signal is so loud in the brain. So I do like this. I like people feeling satiated. I like people feeling like their hunger is quieter. A hunger is a whisper, not a roar. That's a really impactful mechanism, actually, for weight loss. It's easier to eat less if you're less hungry. Ta-da! People really struggle with their hunger signals and their appetite and their cravings. So I like this part of the mechanism of the drug. The third part of the drug is the delayed gastric emptying, which makes you physically feel fuller longer. So the effect on the GI tract in terms of the delayed gastric emptying is different than the metabolic or satiety effect that I just mentioned. In this case, your GI tract is actually literally fuller longer. You're not just feeling fuller. Like satiety is the feeling of fullness in the brain, but the feeling of fullness in the body, the physical feeling of being full. Okay, what are we talking about here? We're talking about poop. Okay, you're full of the waste products of what you've eaten. It just hangs out in your GI tract for a lot longer. It takes a lot longer for it to just kind of move out into the toilet. Okay, sorry, it's not gross. We have to talk about this stuff. But I don't love this mechanism. I don't think any of us really likes this one. It doesn't sound healthy. It doesn't sound like a good idea. And not to jump ahead, but when I have, spoiler alert, have worked with clients this year who've been on these drugs, when I entered these coaching relationships with absolute curiosity and zero judgment. Can I say it one more time for the people in the back? Be a health coach, be a human and work with the human in front of you and don't judge them for having taken these drugs. I know you would never do that, but it can be very tempting. So in working with these folks and proceeding with this curious non-judgment, my clients felt very safe to share with me their experience of being on these medications. And I'd love to hear from you if you've also worked with folks on these medications, because what I heard almost right across the board was that the symptoms were quite miserable, specifically these GI symptoms, the nausea, just feeling kind of gross, like just feeling kind of gross. When you feel kind of gross, you don't really want to eat. You're kind of like, oh, my stomach's a little upset. I'm feeling queasy. I don't really want to eat. So we have all these different mechanisms that are making eating seem less interesting, ultimately. I think that's okay. I think that's okay. To be completely frank with you, that's how I work with clients. I change the way my clients eat. I change their level of insulin sensitivity so that they just have quieter hunger signals. That's how I work with people. I make hunger quieter so that they can make different decisions about food. I do that by changing their meal type, meal composition, meal timing, the medication does it by, injecting. You inject it once a week, right? Or there's an oral medication now, like a pill. Either way, they kind of work the same way, but the side effects, the immediate side effects are unpleasant for a lot of people. That feeling of feeling gross. And then what we don't know, what I'm not going to speak on, frankly, in this conversation, is the long-term effects. I don't think they're well known yet, to my knowledge. I haven't quite honestly spent a lot of time worrying about it at this point. There's probably some problem with tapping the pancreas like that. I don't know. It's hard to know. We have seen these sort of crazy headlines around folks' intestinal tracts actually like atrophying and like collapsing and ceasing to peristaltically function. That doesn't sound good. So, but again, I'm here for the people who are considering these drugs, already taking the drugs, whatever the case may be. That's who we're here for. Okay. So the sort of secondary part to this question, which Tamara asked and also Elena asked, is so Elena's follow-up question was, how does this come up as a topic within the coaching relationship? And Tamara asked, have you noticed any change basically in your health coaching business since these drugs have become so readily available? So yes, in this past year, I'm going to roll this into the sort of second phase of this conversation, which is how my health coaching practice changed this year. But every year around this time, because I'm recording this on December 13th, so almost at the end of the year, I have 4 more client discovery calls this week, and then I got nothing in the calendar. Basically, the work year ends as of this week. And this year, I worked with 51 clients. 50, I had it written down. 51 or 53, 52, we'll say 52 clients. And I had 250 something in my group program. So over 300 clients I worked with this year. Of those over 300 clients, approximately 10 to 12 of them were either A, on the drugs, on the weight loss medications when we started working together, B, were deciding between my program or the weight loss medications, or C, started taking the weight loss medications after we began working together. So 3 really different scenarios there. So let's break this down into these 3 audiences. So let's start with these guys who are on the phone with me, and they're telling me, quite frankly, I'm going to either work with you or I'm going on Ozempic. Well, how am I approaching those conversations in discovery? With curious non-judgment. Tell me more about that. This is a great example of where the skill of decisional balance comes in very useful. Now, my master coach students are probably rolling their eyes at me suggesting decisional balance. But this is where we've got these 2 things we're trying to weigh, right? Now, you've done this before. You've done pros and cons before. What are the pros of, eating this cupcake? What are the cons of eating the cupcake, right? Pros and cons list. Well, decisional balance is when you're trying to decide between 2 things. You're trying to figure out what the pros and cons are of each of these things, sort of compared to each other. So it's more like a pros and cons list with dimension. So you might say, well, tell me what the benefits would be of opting into the drugs, the weight loss medications, rather than working with me. What are the benefits of opting into the weight loss medications instead of working with a coach? Okay, the pros, the benefits of that would be probably quicker, probably easier, right? I just do the injection or take the pill. It influences my appetite signaling. I'm less hungry. I lose weight. It's less work, takes less time. That's a very compelling argument. I mean, who's arguing with that, right? So benefits of opting into a weight loss medication over a health coach, boom, boom, boom. We got a few things there. What are the downsides of opting into a medication rather than working with me, a health coach? Well, the downsides would be, the side effects long-term. I'm reading some weird things. I'm scared that maybe my gut will stop working. I've had a friend who went on it and she was always nauseated all the time. I keep hearing about this thing called Ozempic face, where you lose all your cute fat pad in your skin. I've heard that, you lose muscle mass, and I'm aging and I don't really want to lose weight, muscle mass. So the client is now sensibly making a case for / potentially against opting into the weight loss drugs. Now we take it to the next level. Okay, what would be the benefits of working with a health coach over taking the drugs, right? So remember, decisional balance is pros and cons with like dimension. It's not just this sort of columnar list. It's got dimension, right? So now we're into this next dimension, which is, okay, now what are the benefits of working with a health coach rather than taking the weight loss drugs? Well, the health coach will help me make like lifestyle change, overarching big lifestyle change that will factor in my whole like lived experience, my day-to-day life, my food preferences, my schedule. The health coach will work with me really like personally to understand me and can help me make these changes when it gets hard, so on and so forth. All the many benefits to working with a health coach, right? People will articulate this. People are smart. They know that working with a person, having a person on their team is definitely a transformational paradigm. We don't have to convince them of that. They know that already, right? All right. What would be the downsides to working with a health coach over one of these weight loss medications? The downsides would be, I think a health coaching relationship might be more expensive, or I don't really know. People don't know. The price comes into play sometimes, but the downside is I think it'll be slower. If I work with a health coach, it's going to take a long time. I have to do the work, and I don't trust myself to do the work. I have uncertainty that I'll be consistent enough to do the work to lose the weight. So we can have this really great conversation. That decisional balance exercise is not in any way, and the way you heard me kind of demonstrate it, there's no bias in there. I'm not trying to push you one way or the other. I want the client to fully think through the dimension of this decision. And what ends up often happening is one or two of these sort of sections of the decisional balance grid become obvious. Like when the client replays that back in their head, they're going to see, the benefit of working with a health coach had so many more line items on it that were so much more meaningful to me. Really, the only benefit to going on this weight loss medication is it's going to be faster and easier. But like the downsides, Ozempic face, it costs a lot of money. I don't know if I can ever go off of it. I don't know what the long-term side effects are. Like the client can start talking themselves into and out of things. And this also depends on what stage of change they're at. They have to be ready to want to have these conversations. So just so you know, you will have no success having this conversation with somebody whose mind is made up. If they're already on Ozempic, don't waste your oxygen trying to convince them to get off of it. Truly. They've already decided into it. So I've had clients, as I said, that example I just gave you was the client who was weighing between joining up with me or taking the weight loss medication. And I will tell you that in 100%, for me, 100% of the time, the client said, I'm going to start with you and see how it goes before I go down that path. I just don't think regular people, I'm trying to think outside of like the celebrities that are taking it, right? But regular people like you and me, we have bills to pay. We can't be throwing $1,000 a month at a medication that's kind of dubious. They're making sensible choices. Most people are. In 100% of those occasions, by me simply holding curious, non-judgmental space, that person decided to come work with me, and they put the weight loss medication sort of in their backup plan. Okay. In some cases, folks who were already on the drug started working with me. And in many of these cases, this probably only happened, let's call it maybe 3 people this year, who came to me and said, oh, by the way, I'm on Ozempic or Wegovy, one of these drugs. Is that okay that I'm on this drug? Can I still work with you? I said, absolutely, because the way I'm going to work with you actually kind of works in a similar way as those medications do. And I don't really know for sure because we don't know. But my hunch is if you and I work together to kind of get some of these metabolic pathways working better, then maybe it'll be easier for you to come off the drug someday without any major rebound effect. I don't know. It seems plausible to me. But in the interim, I got you. I'm not going to turn you away. You might, by the way, coaches, decide to turn someone away who's on these drugs. It might be a matter of personal integrity for you. You got to stick to your integrity, stick to your guns. If it is a matter of personal integrity to you that you don't want to work with somebody who's on these medications, then state that very clearly. Just say, I'm sorry, Sally, I don't currently work with people on these semaglutides, but I have a roster of peers who I can refer you to. Just do that. And by the way, that goes for any client who is not in your wheelhouse. Just don't work with them. keto, carnivore, paleo, AIP, SCD, low FODMAP, so many diets, so much confusion. And if health coaches are having a hard time keeping up, imagine how clients must feel. To make sense of it all, Primal Health Coach Institute partnered with registered dietitian and health coach Martha Tettenborn to create a comprehensive functional therapeutic diet specialist certification. This flexible online course dives deep into the many different types of therapeutic diets. You'll learn the purpose of each of these diets and how to help your clients map out a nutritional plan to resolve their specific health issues. As a certified functional therapeutic diet specialist, you'll help people reach a deeper understanding of food as medicine and transform their lives for the better. Find out more at primalhealthcoach.com. So about 3 clients came in already on these medications. And in all 3 instances, they stopped taking them at some point during our relationship because they weren't working. So this is pure anecdote, 1,000,000% anecdote, but the 3 clients that I took on who were already on these drugs were not having good results. They were spending the money, they were experiencing the nausea, and they were not losing any weight. They're like, why am I doing this? This is dumb. So as soon as we started working together, they realized they kind of liked the health coach approach a little better, and it ends up being more affordable, quite frankly. And you don't get with my program, you're not going to be experiencing nausea all day long. So all 3 of those people quit using the drug because they weren't seeing results. Now, this is interesting because of the people that I've encountered who have been on these drugs, I haven't encountered anybody who's had results. I'm thinking now, to be more honest, I had 2 clients who, remember I told you there was a whole third category of people who took the drug after we worked together? 2 of my clients took the drug after we worked together and they had results, which is interesting to me because when we worked together, we kind of repaired some metabolic pathways. Then they went and took the drugs and lost weight. And I'm thinking there's something there. What if somebody was fully metabolically flexible, insulin sensitive, and then they kind of use this drug? I mean, maybe there's, in that case, the overproduction of insulin seems less problematic because now you have insulin sensitive cells, although I would be worried that it might recreate insulin resistance. Anyway, those 2 clients did lose weight. They went on the drug after we worked together, but everybody else that I worked with, the 8 other people that I worked with, either just quit taking them, didn't have results at all. That's been my experience, anecdotally. So to summarize, has this impacted my coaching business this year? I would say not really. Other than the fact that I now have people coming into my roster who are on these drugs. And that didn't happen. That literally didn't happen prior to this year. But it was nothing. For me, it was nothing. There was no new thing I had to factor in. I didn't have like a separate curriculum. Please, click here if you're on Ozempic. I still work with people the exact same way on the exact same things, irrespective of what medication they're on. You're on Ozempic, you're on a blood pressure med, you're on a metformin. It doesn't matter. I'm not working with you with your medications. I want you to keep I want you to keep your doctor close. You're having side effects on the medication, take that up with your doctor. And by the way, one other area that health coaches can double down is helping their clients advocate for themselves inside the healthcare system. So if my client comes to me with these, reporting these terrible side effects, Erin, I tried to eat breakfast every day this week, but I was so nauseated. I think it's from these drugs. I might need to adjust the dosage. I'd be like, well, let's talk about that. I think it's really important for you to eat breakfast. So can we make a plan for you to maybe get in touch with your doctor and talk about how to adjust your dosing so that you don't have this nausea, so that you can eat? And, you'll find out if the client has a good relationship with their doctor or not. And if they don't, you can help them to find maybe an additional doctor or somebody else they can talk to who will listen to them. I feel like this is really in the purview of a health coach, helping our clients advocate for themselves inside the medical system without coming down on the medical system. Because, guys, general population, health consumer trusts their doctor. So why are we going to come in and start pounding the table again against the sick care system? It's not going to curry favor. It's not going to help our clients trust us. We come off sounding a little kooky when we do that, quite frankly. I don't like it for us. It's not a good look. That's just my personal opinion. But we can help our clients manage the symptoms and side effects of these drugs through their healthcare practitioner. Okay. So, in summary, I've peacefully coexisted with these weight loss medications through my practice in 2023. I worked with over 300 people. 10 of them were either on the drug, had just come off the drug, were considering the drug. And there was no difference in outcome with those people versus my other clients. Apart from the 2 who did try these medications after we worked together and just texted me or DM'd me on Instagram to say, hey, just so you know, I went on Ozempic 3 months ago and I've lost 25 pounds. I don't think this would have worked if I hadn't worked with you first, because I taught them health behaviors. I taught them how to eat, how to move, how to rest, how to sleep, how to balance their central nervous system. That's the stuff I taught them. And then when you layer these kind of these medications on top that affect metabolic sort of function, if you're layering that over top of a well-functioning metabolism already, maybe they work better. I don't know. That's my story. Now, the second phase of questions that I had come in here, we're going to change gears slightly, but I did kind of segue this a little bit. Tamara's first question was, with the downturn in the economy, have you noticed a decrease in the number of people who are reaching out and signing up? Tamara also had a couple of follow-up questions. She said, in a previous episode, you mentioned that you have changed your business model and have stopped coaching one-on-one and now only do group coaching. Could you tell us more about that? What are the benefits? How's it going? What are the challenges? I love this question. I'm going to go pretty high level on this as well, because I don't want to bore you, and I want to wrap this up in a good 10 or 15 minutes here. So hang with me, coaches. So in 2023, I did a couple big moves in my business. I just want you to know, by way of quick backstory, that I started my health coaching business in 2014. So that's almost 10 years ago. And from a health coaching perspective, that's pretty long. Like, health coaching has only been around about that long, Quite frankly, when I started my health coaching practice, I didn't start a health coaching practice. I started a nutrition practice, right? In 2014, I had gone to school to become a holistic nutritionist. And I started a nutrition, I'm using air quotes, nutrition practice. And I quickly realized people don't need help with nutrition. Like, nutrition? What? Like vitamin insufficiencies? I don't want to work on that. I have no interest in that. I want to help people lose weight. I want to help people come back from insulin resistance. That's what I did. That was my origin story. So I quickly realized that nutrition wasn't the thing I was selling. It was a solution. I've got a solution to a specific problem. And I just started marketing myself as an online coach that solves this problem almost 10 years ago. And lo and behold, this is now a health coaching practice. We now have a name, and we have a standard set of professional conduct and code of ethics, and scope of practice is becoming more formalized. I mean, we're getting close to having insurance codes available for health coaching. Health coaching is making a massive difference inside the healthcare system now. It's nuts, the growth of this industry. But almost 10 years ago, it wasn't even an industry yet. But I started out knowing that I wanted to solve a specific problem for a specific kind of person. And so I'm telling you, I'm sharing this with you because I want you to understand how the slow growth that this took to get me to what I'm going to tell you happened this year. Okay. So yes, this year, to get to the crux of Tamara's question, I moved from one-on-one coaching to group coaching. I had to, because my health coaching business grew to the point where I couldn't do one-on-one coaching. I had 52 clients this year. If I'd worked with 52 people one-on-one, I would have run myself into the ground. Think about like a 1-hour coaching call once a week, 52 people running through the roster, plus the group programs, the short duration group program that I host. Just a lot. It'd be a lot of work. So I wanted to give you my origin, because I think it's important to understand that I'm 10 years down this garden path. And at the 10-year mark, 9-year mark, let's be really specific. At the 9-year mark, I realized I can't do one-on-ones anymore, or I will perish. So I had to make a change. I made a lot of changes in my business this year. One thing that I did that I'll just tease, and maybe I can talk about this in a future episode, we'll see. I'm hedging, because what I'm about to tease to you, I'm not an expert in. Right? I'm learning how to do this myself. I started running paid ads. to get fresh eyeballs on my product, my service, my health coaching expertise, right? I have a good following on social media, and I get a lot of organic, predominantly organic traffic. Clients come through organic means. Organic just means I post, they pay attention, they like what I say, they click the book now button, they come in of their own volition, versus paid leads, which are people who are scrolling Facebook and saw my ad and were intrigued enough to click a button, but they don't know who I am or what I do or why or how or for who. So I moved into paid ads this year, which means I had more traffic just generally coming into my roster. That's the point. That's why I did it. And in conjunction with now this uptick in clients, which I paid for, probably 50-50, probably 50% of my clients came from paid ads and 50% came from organic means. Because my roster grew, I had to change the delivery because I wasn't going to be able to service these clients in a one-on-one level in any meaningful way. And got to tell you guys, this was hard for me because I love one-on-one coaching. I love it. I love getting with people. This imaginary Sally character that I always evoke in these conversations, talking to Sally about the lamb chops she got on sale. Those are the conversations I thrive on. I love getting into the absolute weeds with my clients on these granular little scenarios that they're trying to navigate. And I wondered, how can I do that in a group? Well, I'm here to tell you that I am well and truly converted. I love group coaching now. It is a higher touch paradigm than one-on-one, and I'll explain why I feel that way. And to go back to Tamara's question, I'll talk about this, how I structure this. Okay, so maybe this will be helpful for you. This is going to be super high level as well. I've done these deep dives into my business for Primal Health Coach students, but I'm going to go pretty high level today. The first thing that goes away is my clients don't have a weekly check-in anymore, and they don't have a weekly coaching call anymore. So from a mechanistic perspective, I had to change a lot of my client programming communication. Previously, I had an email automation set up that when a client enrolls with me every Sunday, they would receive a weekly check-in email. Go here to fill in the weekly check-in form and book your coaching call for the week. And they would do that. They would fill in their form, they'd book their call, fill in their form, book their call, week over week. And then I would wake up because I use a booking tool, which is a tool I really recommend you get. And these appointments are now populating in my calendar. And that's fine and great until you have an enormous client roster. And then it becomes immediately overwhelming to wake up one morning and scroll through your calendar and see that you are back to back in calls for 12 hours or more. It's not okay. Because don't forget, I'm also engaging in a lot of enrollment calls because I have ads going out now. I have more people in my calendar booking discovery calls, which are hour-long calls. What if I had 15 discovery calls in a week and 50 client calls in a week? I would die under the weight of that. I don't want to work that hard, my friends. I don't want you to work that hard, quite frankly. Now, again, I go back to the origin, which is in the early days, I didn't have a client roster that was overwhelming like that. But as soon as I made the decision to get into paid ads and level myself up, I immediately needed to change the delivery of my program because it was becoming immediately overwhelming. So here's how I run it. This is actually changing for 2024. I'm moving from a 12-week program to a 6-month program. And this episode is going live in 2024, so it's pertinent. But let's talk about the 6-month program. It's basically the same as I've always done it this year, but I'm just extending the duration of it to 6 months. So a client does what they always do. They join me on a discovery call. I decide if they're a 10 out of 10 perfect good fit for my program. They have to tell me if they're 10 out of 10, if this is 10 out of 10 important for them, and if it's anything less than 10 out of 10 important, or if I feel anything less than 10 out of 10 perfect fit, we don't proceed. But if it's 10 out of 10 for both of us, we proceed. Then my clients complete their intake forms like they normally would. I have these intake forms that I've created and perfected over the years. They pay, they sign the client agreement. So all that sort of front end paperwork stuff, intake agreement and payment happens at the front. Then they're enrolled immediately. As soon as the intake forms come back, I enroll them. And what that means is I'm enrolling them in a curriculum, my online curriculum. I'm enrolling them in my community. They have a special dedicated community full of people who are just like them, clients. I host this on Facebook because it's the easiest. And we might hate Facebook, but there's 4 billion users, so we might as well just be there. And they get enrolled in a calendar. I use a calendar tool called Team Up, which is where I post all of the coaching calls that are available to them. So I just want to circle back to those 3 C's: curriculum, community, and calendar coaching. Curriculum, community, and coaching, we'll say the 3 C's. That's honestly what I would want you to have in your practice, irrespective of how you roll it out. If you're one-on-one, if you're working in groups, you got to have a curriculum. You got to have some kind of way for them to learn what you are going to be teaching. Curriculum. A community is really critical because they're going to get help from peers, or maybe you have support staff, or you. Honestly, running a Facebook community or similar is a very nice way of keeping tabs on your clients in between coaching calls. And that's an extra level of support. And the beautiful thing too about community is there's an observational learning aspect to it, where if Sally posts a question, "Hey gang, I just got these lamb chops on sale. I don't know how to cook them. Anybody have any ideas?" Well, 5 or 6 people who are really good at cooking lamb can give Sally ideas. Guess who can't give Sally lamb chop ideas? Me. I don't know how to cook lamb. I don't want to. But my community might be able to help Sally do that. Isn't that great? And they can come together and have that support together. Some clients don't think they like community. They might tell you, like, "I'm a lone wolf. I don't really love participating in communities," but I've converted a lot of people. I said, "Well, just trust me on this. I think you're going to like it because these people are just like you." We're all the same. We're all midlife women battling insulin resistance and perimenopause at the same damn time. Okay, so we have the community piece, and then the coaching piece, which is the conversations that you facilitate with your client, the relationship between you and your client. This is the part that changes dramatically when you go from one-on-one to group. When you're on one-on-one, I pick up the phone, I call my client, I initiate the conversation. We go through the whole coaching conversation framework. If you don't know what that is, let me know and I'll run you through that. I might have done an episode on that already. We go through the whole coaching conversation framework. We get to goal setting. The client now has a goal for the next week. They go out and try to execute that goal. We get back on the phone the next week. How did that goal go? Now we're playing catch up. We're posthumously looking at that goal and saying, well, it was okay, or it didn't go that well, or it went really well. We kind of have to always be in the past tense, pulling what happened last week into the present tense. Okay, now here's where we're at now. What's our next step? Then the client goes off again for a week. They come back a week later. We have to review. Totally fine. That system worked for me like gangbusters for 9 years. Here's how it works in group coaching. I have an open call calendar. Okay. Here's all the Zoom calls I'm hosting this week. On Monday, it's at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. On Tuesday, it's at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time. On Wednesday, it's at 6 a.m. Mountain Time. That was today. That was early. Thursday, we're going to do it at 1 p.m. And then Friday, we'll do 4 p.m. Whatever. I have this sort of floating schedule of open coaching calls. I call them open calls because I'm in the Zoom room for 1 hour. My clients have access to my calendar and these Zoom links, and they can drop in whenever they want. So this is great. For example, I have one client who's in South Africa, and only 2 of my 5 open time slots per week even work for her. She's asleep the other times. So she's like, I can come in on Monday, I can come in on Friday. Monday's at 8 p.m. Friday's at like 7 a.m., but I'm going to make it work. She comes in, she makes it work. I've had other clients who show up at every call 5 days a week. Now, they don't always have something they want to work on. They'll just show up, they'll put their headphones in. Maybe they're working, maybe they're driving, maybe they're walking the dog. They're learning by listening to what the other clients are saying. At any given time, because I move people through my roster in these 6-month intervals, people are coming in and out of the roster. I maybe have, let's call it 25, 30, who knows, 40 people in my roster at any given time. Only going to grow from here, folks, as I continue to perfect my ads. There's 30, 40 people in my roster at any given time. They're not all showing up on every call. A busy call is like 8 people. A typical call is 2 to 4 people. So if folks think they're going to be really put off by being in a large group, the great news is it's not a large group. We just don't maintain enormous client rosters like that. And people do really learn to love the group model. So that's how I'm executing the group coaching model, open coaching calls. I'm also adding a couple other things. Once every 2 weeks, I'm adding what's called office hours. So once every 2 weeks, my clients have access to this calendar booking link where they can book a 20-minute session with me one-on-one. I have a 2-hour office hours window of time on Wednesday afternoons. I blocked my calendar. This is Erin's office hours. If you want to talk to me, click here to get one of my, what it would be like 6 available office hour spots, these 20-minute spots. You can book it if you want a one-on-one. If you want a one-on-one, those office hours options are there for you. And then also every month, every client is invited to a one-on-one, just a monthly check-in. So we get on for 20 minutes again. This is your dedicated time with me one-on-one. Let's talk about where you are. Let's talk about where you're going to move for the next month. Please make sure to show up on some open coaching calls, because the open coaching calls are where we can get into the weeds. And this is why I love it. This is why I think this group coaching model is higher touch than one-on-one, because I have 5 coaching calls a week that you can jump into. So if you're struggling on Tuesday, you get into the call on Tuesday. We're going to solve that problem on Tuesday. You don't have to wait until your weekly coaching call to solve the problem, because by the time a client gets the weekly coaching call, they might have forgotten the problem or downplayed the problem, or even worse, the problem got worse. And now they're too afraid to show up to the coaching call. I want people to jump in when they need the help immediately. So there's less latency, a greater frequency available to the client to get the help in the moments when they need it. And this has been insanely productive. A client's got one tiny little question they need answered. Come on in, ask the question. We'll work it out together. Then you can keep going, making big change this way. I don't want to make it sound all sunshine and rainbows. There's a lot of growing pains in moving from one-on-one to group. For example, I did feel like I had less personal relationships with my clients at first, but then I remembered, well, that's actually not my job. I'm here to facilitate the changes in their life. I have a specific curriculum that everybody follows, right? The curriculum, the first of the 3 C's. And I want you to go into your life and execute my curriculum in a way that makes sense for you. Then all you need to do is come back and let me know how that's going for you. And I feel 100% confident that we can co-create a solution. But I need to know what your specific scenario is. I actually don't need to really know the intricacies of your life. You put the onus back on the client to come back in and you tell me what you need from me. This is a partnership after all. I'm not the boss here. We are 50-50 in this relationship. You show up to the call with your issue. I'll show up to the call with my expertise. We're going to co-create the solution and you go off on your own. Honestly, as a busy person, I assume all people are very busy and don't really want to belabor themselves in these long, arduous coaching conversations. So we can be more nimble in the group coaching model, which I quite like. The one downside, another downside, hear me out on this one, is the clients who ghost. So imagine now you have, instead of having maybe 10 one-on-one clients in your roster, and you're like, I only got 9 calls booked. Which of my clients didn't book? Oh my God, it was Sally. Sally didn't book this week. Why didn't Sally book? Hey, Sally, why didn't you book a call this week? I noticed you're not in my calendar. We have a smaller client roster and you're working with these one-on-one coaching calls. It's a little easier to keep track of people who forgot to book the call. When you're hosting open coaching calls, you can lose track of people, particularly when your client roster is larger. So that's something I've really struggled with. Every now and then I realize, I haven't seen Bob on the call in a long time. When was the last time I saw Bob? It's been weeks since I saw Bob. If I happen to remember, I'll follow up with Bob and say, hey, Bob, I need to get you on a call, man. We got to work this out. Where are you at? This is why I've introduced one-on-one calls once a month and office hours. So people who, for whatever reason, are ghosting on the group calls can have a resource to sit with me one-on-one and work through whatever the issue is. But I still want people to get on these calls. I need them to come onto the group calls. That's where I'm doing the bulk of my coaching. So I've started really driving this home in discovery. I'll say to the prospective client, look, this only works if you agree to show up. So if there's any hesitation on your end as to whether you're going to show up for these calls, we shouldn't proceed. I make that very clear. It's in the client agreement that they sign. I will show up. And if I don't show up, that's on me, in a manner of speaking. I have it written more legally and professionally than that. But I've started to really drive this home. And by the way, that's important, because what are we trying to do with our clients? Ultimately, we're trying to drive them to self-efficacy, to autonomy, they're doing it because they want to, and they have the skills, resources, and knowledge to do it themselves. This whole accountability partner thing, that's not what we're here for. We're not here to be an accountability partner for the client. We're here to teach them to be accountable to themselves. So if a client signs up and then ghosts on the group calls, there's a little bit of chasing around you have to do, but I would encourage you to put that up front very early on in the early conversation and in your client agreement so that the client knows, look, the onus is on you. The onus is on you to do this work. But I'll also say, I don't have, like, percentage-wise, I don't have a higher percentage of ghost clients. It just seems like more ghost clients because I have more clients in my roster now. And I'm running these group calls, and I'm having, there's just a little bit of an inherent harder time to track people down. So that's a system that I need to improve. I need to improve that system. And after having done this for a year, I'm going into year 2 now of group coaching, and I'm completely convinced it's the path forward for health coaches once you get to a certain point. So I do want to reiterate, I love for you to start with one-on-one, get that nailed, dial that in. You're going to find a point in your health coaching career. Maybe it's 9 years down the line. Maybe it's 2 years down the line where you're so busy that you realize you need to go to group. And then you don't have to knock it out of the park. I think I did a pretty good job creating this group program. I'm seeing room for improvement. So in 2024, I'll be introducing more of an attendance policy of some kind so I can keep track of people better. I think I might reinstate a weekly check-in form, just encouraging clients to go to a form and journal about how their week is going. Will I reference that form? I'll be able to reference it. If I get onto a call and Bob finally shows up at a call, I'm like, Bob, you're here. I can pull up Bob's form. That's easy. Using the Google Suite, I can pull up Bob's form, see what Bob wants to talk about. That's actually not that hard. Yeah, I have grown to appreciate group coaching as a higher touch, more transformational approach than one-on-one. For clients, coaches who have large rosters, it's truly the only way to be transformational. Your other option is, and I did this, by the way, for far longer than I should, so heed my warning. I stayed in the one-on-one model longer than I probably should and stymied the growth of my business because I was convinced it was the only way. And I had to bust that sort of limiting belief myself. I want to have a greater impact. I want hundreds of people to come through my coached program. I had 53 people come through my coach program this year. I want to 10x that. I want 500 people to come through in 2024. I want to make a greater impact. These 6-month coaching relationships in these small, medium-sized groups with a beautiful curriculum, a beautiful community, and awesome access to coaching from an expert, which is me. The change we can make. It's so interesting to come full circle to kind of cap off this conversation. If I could impact 500 people's metabolic health by changing their food, movement, and lifestyle behaviors, then they don't have to go on the drugs, do they? Well. All right, my friends, thank you for these awesome questions. I look forward to hearing what else you want to talk about. So do share, and we will keep this beautiful conversation about health coaching going. All right, take good care, and we'll see you soon.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.